Well, good morning. We're so excited that you're here for the very first Spark to Heal event. I am Melanie Schwartz and this is Danielle Dahl. We'll talk about ourselves here in a second, but one of the things that we are just amazed by is how many people this idea resonated with. We know how important it is to tell stories. We know how important it is to share your experience and then have other people have that as an inspiration or a transformation for themselves. And so to actually do a full day conference on it is kind of a dream come true for both of us. So we're really excited. Like I said, I'm Melanie Schwartz. I'm the CEO of Upstream Strategy Partners and the co-founder of Kelly Speaker Academy. And my background is really I did public relations and marketing for years. And then I was working in a corporate setting and I had kind of a mental health challenge. And it had to do with our daughter's addiction. And it really stopped me in my tracks. And it really stopped me in a way that I didn't understand that my story was unfolding as it was happening, but that's really what was going on. There was a story being written in this journey that would end up being a really beautiful transition for me to be able to share it and change careers and be standing in front of a room of people like yourselves today. So my story is that, but I want to introduce Danielle Dahl because this is really her sweet spot. She writes stories for other people. She tells people stories. She uses stories through crafts. I mean, there's just an amazing plethora of things that she is really good at. And she has really put so much thought into today's event for us. And so I want you to really just sit back, enjoy, listen to the other stories, and try to take little pieces from everybody's story and take them with you today to make your life better or to make your life more fulfilled as you leave and go into the holiday season. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Danielle, and she'll tell you a little bit more about what we're doing today.
Before we do that, do you want to introduce Ani?
Oh, I would love to introduce Ani. One of the things that Ani's like, Ani Michalski is back in the back of the room. She is a licensed therapist. We thought it was important to have a professional on staff today with us in case anything happens today that triggers someone, or maybe you need to talk to someone about something you heard. We want to make sure that that can happen. And so Ani is your resource. She will be in the room all of the time. If you want to talk to her privately, we have private spaces that we've set aside. So Ani's your gal if you need anything like that. Okay? Perfect. Now, Danielle.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Danielle Dahl, as Melanie said, and I am the founder and CEO of Resilient Stories. Resilient Stories started as a website where people could share real-life stories of overcoming adversity, trauma, everyday challenges. It was really just a space where we could share stories. And then that turned into monthly events where we gather and tell stories while we do crafts and talk about well-being. It turned into a YouTube channel. It turned into a whole thing, including this conference. And I'm going to keep it really short, but I have a few quotes that I wanted to share with you all before we got started. So this first one is from Jimmy Neal Smith, and it says, "Through storytelling, we share what it means to be human." And that was kind of my inspiration for this event. I told Melanie, half in jest, when we talked about this, that I wanted everybody to cry today, hence why you all have tissues. So I think crying is one of the things that makes us feel uniquely human. So do a lot of other things like laughing, and I hope you do some of that today too. But the goal was to have us all be in touch with our humanity and feel. So I hope that happens for you today. The second quote I want to share is by Jean-Luc Godard. "Sometimes reality is too complex, stories give it form." So some of the stories and content you might hear today are complex. Some of it is traumatic. Some of it is going to be hard. So I want everybody to know that going in. That is the reason that we're going to start the morning with some grounding practices and Qigong. Carol Penn over here is going to kick us off with that. But we do have breaks built in, so that'll be a good time if anybody needs to chat with Ani. That's a great time. If you need to chat with Ani outside of a break, that's a great time too. But there are breaks built in, so if you need something, some air or whatever, feel free to get that whenever or during a break. And then the last quote I have is by Janet Litherland, and it says, "Stories have power. They delight, enchant, touch, teach, recall, inspire, motivate, challenge. They help us understand." And so that is really what I wish for everybody today, to understand your own stories a little better, to understand someone else's story a little better, and to just know how we can use that to move forward in this world we all live in. So that's what I have. You want to introduce Carol?
Yeah. Okay. So I just wanted to tell a quick story, because as I was coming into this last week, I was at a business meeting, and I was there with a gentleman that I would say over the years maybe a little bit contentious of a relationship. He always is at the meetings, he's very stern and everything. And we were talking about a subject that was really challenging, and I was listening to the crowd, and he was sitting there very quietly. He came up to me after the meeting, and he said, "This is happening to me," and his child is suffering from a really serious addiction right now, substance use disorder. And I thought I would have never known that if I hadn't shared my story. So there's the inspiration. There's how other people hear and then come back to you and want to know more. So I am excited. We are going to start our storytelling day today with a absolutely fabulous woman. I've known her for years, and so it's hard to introduce her and like read this bio, because I just want to be like, she's so cooler, much cooler than this bio, but I'm gonna do it because that's the way we're going. Becky has lived in Billings for over 30 years, hailing from Deer Lodge, Montana. As a grant writer and communications specialist, she has worked in nonprofits addressing substance addiction and mental illness. Currently serving as government relations specialist at KLJ Engineering. In 2022, she faced a divorce and a near-fatal car crash, leading her to reassess her values. Her recovery highlighted the significance of community and inspired her to advocate for collaboration across systems, all while maintaining grace and humor. With that, I would love to invite my really good friend, Becky Rosenleaf, to the stage.
Thank you. Well, thanks everyone. So I don't know if it's a blessing or a curse to kick things off. I'm going to take it as a blessing, because then you don't have any expectations yet, and I get to say whatever I want, right? So before I actually tell you my story, I want to shout out again to Danielle. This is such a unique forum. I was telling somebody, I speak professionally most of the time. I've never done anything like this. So we're going to give each other a little grace here today with that, but it wouldn't happen without Danielle. So also a couple caveats, since Carol and I got me all, I'm in like a 6, hanging in a 6 here, Carol. And tell you a couple things. First, before I tell you my story, we're going to hear a lot of stories today, and I have to tell you, my first rule is I don't believe in comparative suffering. So my story is mine, your story is yours, everybody's stories is theirs, and none of them are more important or better or any of those things. So first rule. The second is, while I might cry in public, more often than not, I stick with the humor side of things. So we're going to try and make you laugh first, and then I'll let other people make you cry. So with that, I'm going to tell you a little story called "Then God Said, Hold My Beer." And to be able to tell you that, first I have to tell you who I was. So I think for those of us that consider ourselves resilient, there's usually something that happens that changes everything, right? So you gauge everything in your life by what happened before and what happened after. If you don't have something like that in your personal life, think COVID, right? What happened before and what happened after? Or if you're old enough, and I'm going to date myself, when John F. Kennedy was shot, what happened before and after? So 9/11, before and after. So I have a life like that too. Before 2022, I had what I thought was the perfect life, right? Great job, great friends. I was in a happy marriage. I had it all. And I had one of those moments in late 21 where I had that thing that you do very rarely where you're like, I got this dick. Like I am ripping it up, right? Like this is as good as it's gonna get. Like my life is the shit. Anybody ever have that? Yeah, don't do it. Let me help you with that. Don't do that. It ends real badly. So I had that. I had this like month where I was like, in no world could I have seen my life this privileged, this blessed, this full, right? I've got all the things. And then God said, hold my beer. So in January of 22, the man I'd been married to for 26 years announced that he had met his soulmate, and it turns out that wasn't me. And I had kind of seen that coming, but you know when you see something and you really don't want to see it, and so you just kind of ignore it, and you come to the side of it, and you think it's not really that bad, and I'm imagining that, and you ask the questions. If you haven't figured out already, I'm pretty transparent and honest, and I said in late 21, this doesn't feel right. Like, what's going on, dude? Nothing, happy as a clam, marriage is great, awesome. And then on January 3rd, he says, I've met my soulmate, and I don't know what to do about that. I have some thoughts. So that started what by most standards was a pretty amicable divorce. I don't have kids. We made a decision to come into that marriage with things and leave with the same things we left with. As usual, because this is what women do, I took control. I did all the responsible things. I adulted while he moved in with his soulmate. And that divorce was final by the first week of March. So now, I'm alone for the first time in almost 30 years, and I haven't quite figured out what I'm going to do, but I think I'm going to leave Billings. I have always had a love-hate relationship with Montana. I love so many things about it, and I hate the winter and I hate the politics. So I was like, this is my shot, right? Because I lived here because of my ex, my husband, if you'd like to know. So now I was rid of the husband, and I could go anywhere I wanted. I have a sister in Seattle. Both my parents had passed. I was like, I can do anything I want. So I really started contemplating, where might I go next, right? And then on May 13th, I had this car crash. And I apologize if these photos are triggering. They trigger me too, by the way. And all my fault. Let's just start there. This wasn't a drunk driver. This wasn't somebody who smashed into me. This was my dumbassery. So I'm on my way from work to a meeting, and I pick up the phone. I have a text, and I look down for what I think is a minute. And when I look up, I have swerved into the parking lane, and I slammed into the back of a parked utility trailer doing about 35 miles an hour. Now, this is when you know you should reassess your life, not the crash. What happened directly after the crash? So I'm in the car, you can see what the car looks like, right? And I pick up my phone and I call the person who I'm supposed to meet with. Does anyone think this is crazy? Yeah, Carol's like, no. How many either recovering or not recovering control freaks do I have in the room? Yeah, dude. Like, I'm literally, the whole front of the car is in my lap, and I'm picking up my cell phone to call the person I'm supposed to meet with. And I get her, and I say, hey, Jennifer, I'm not going to make that meeting. I've had a little bit of a car accident. And so I'm really sorry. I'll catch up with you later. And then I pick up the phone again, and I call my best friend, who at that time lived in Helena, but was here in Billings. And she's at work, and I say, hey, Mary, I've had a little bit of a car accident, and I'm wondering if you could come and get my purse, because I'm pretty sure I've cracked my ankle. Sure, she says. So I tell her where we're at. And then I pick up the phone and I call my office and I say, I've had a little bit of a car accident on my way to the meeting. I'll get back in touch with you this afternoon when I figure out how bad it is. All of that before someone actually gets to the window of my car and before EMTs arrive. So what I thought was a little car accident actually turned out to be slightly more than that. They had to use the jaws of life to pull me out of the car. I crushed both my feet, my right knee, 7 ribs, and I was concussed. I spent 3 weeks in the hospital, 4 surgeries, And then I was completely non-weight bearing in a wheelchair for almost 4 months. I lost the rest of the year, basically. And I still look back at that and think, I did not think it was that bad. Like, how dumb am I? Look at this car, people. My sister flew in from Seattle to take care of me so I didn't have to go into an assisted care facility. God love her for the rest of my life. And she stayed with me for almost 3 months so that we could do that. And I have so many stories that come out of that, right? But the one that is most important is that one night, in the middle of the night, when you can't sleep because you're wholly uncomfortable. Also at that time, I was still in my old house, which might be the least handicap accessible house in the world. So I'm in a 10 by 10 square that I can function in my wheelchair. They had to rip the door out of my bathroom so I could get into the bathroom, right? The whole door in the frame, and God love engineers that I work with who did that. And I'm sitting in the recliner because I can't get into the bed, and I'm looking into the abyss, and I have this thought. I don't think I'm going anywhere, and not because I'm crippled. I don't think I'm going anywhere because this is my home. Like, this is my home. It might have been my husband's when we moved here, but it's my home now. I've been here 30 years, and I built a community, and the reason I know I built a community is, and this is where I will cry, the way this community rose up around me when I couldn't rise up. And I'm going to talk more about that, but I can't express it. If you've not lived somewhere like that, if you don't have a circle like that, I can't possibly explain it to you. So there I am, flat on my ass, letting everybody take care of me, which, by the way, for those of us that are control freaks, how easy is that? Oh, I was not nice. Ask any of the people who came to my house during that time about my attitude, not cool. It was not cool. Get away from me. I don't need you. I got this. Clearly I don't got this, right? Can't get out of the chair, can't feed myself, can't do the things, right? So I had this time. I think what happens when you have something like that happen, right? And I was literally mourning the death of my marriage and mourning the death of the life I thought I'd have while I'm incapable of moving is all you have is time. And the worst part about all you have is time is all you have is your thoughts. And I spent a lot of time in my head. It's not pretty in there. Don't go. But it really gave me clarity. And I had done quite a bit of work before this crash about who am I? What are my core values? If you're a fan of Brene Brown, she does a whole thing on what are your core values. And I knew what my core values were, but this required me to live them, right? So I want to talk about those. The first is grace. And I am super good. Anybody who knows me, who's worked with me, Melanie can tell you this. People I work with can tell you this. I'm super good at this with other people. I am one of the least judgmental, save space for, meet people where they're at, people you will find. Let me tell you who doesn't get that grace. If people talk to me the way I talk to me, I would kill them. Right? I'm so mean to me. I'm so mean. And I had all this time in my head to be really mean to myself. Look at you, dumbass. First you lose a husband, now you've lost your legs, and here you sit. Like, I beat myself to death until I didn't. Until I was like, really? If this was someone else, would you say that to them? And then I stopped doing that. Now, don't get me wrong. That bitch still pops up sometimes. She says horrible things. But most of the time, the first person I give grace to is me, right? Because I'm trying to figure out what it feels like to love me. It's the hardest work you'll ever do. It's also the most important work you'll ever do. So grace. I try and give it to others, and more importantly now, I try to give it to myself. The second is humor. So I grew up in a family with a lot of humor. We typically spice that humor with a lot of horrible vocabulary. My dad had the best sailor's mouth. I learned it from the pros. But the bottom line is, if you can't laugh at it, it will laugh at you. Because life is funny, right? Oscar Wilde said, life is far too important to take it seriously. My dad's take on that was, the situation is hopeless. It is never serious. So this sense of humor is a load-bearing structure, ladies and gentlemen. I take it everywhere. And if you don't believe me, tell me, corner me afterwards, and I will tell you the story of the emergency poo. Because trust me, if you can make that funny, you can make everything funny. So these are the two things that guide me. These are the things that are who I am at my very core. And I don't do them perfectly. In fact, I don't do them even half perfectly. But they're who I want to be. They're who I want to be when I come into the world. So, let me click. This is the other thing I learned. And this is why I said this is where I live. Who are your people? How many introverts do I have in the room? Hardcore introverts, yeah. Even hardcore introverts have people, right? I hear that all the time. I do better on my own. I prefer to be on my own. Trust me, if you're in a wheelchair, you also prefer to be on your own. I'm a born-in-the-blood extrovert. But the bottom line is, you don't know who your people are until you don't have a choice, right? The people I thought might be my people turned out maybe not to be my people. The people who were my people showed up without question. And they showed up again and again and again. And when I said, I don't want you here, and I don't like myself and I don't like you, they said, yeah, too bad for you. Too bad for you. What do you want to watch on TV? I don't want you to watch anything. I want all of you to go away. Also too bad for you. Right? They showed up when I couldn't show up. So who's your tribe? Who are your people? Whether they're one person or 10 people. So this is my year of doing things that are really uncomfortable. Hello? Really uncomfortable. One of those things is I have lots of body images, right? Don't we have all kinds of weird body image stuff? Ugh. And so I decided to have professional photos taken. Let me just tell you how out of my comfort zone that was. I worked with Erica Lipp. If you haven't worked with her, I cannot recommend her highly enough. And she did not pay me to say that. She actually came to my home. She met me. She talked to me. She figured out what my story was. She asked me my story. And when I talked about this, and I talked about these women and some men who held me up in this, she said, you should bring them. You should bring those women to your photo shoot. Let's just do that. So we had 4 hours in this studio with these women, including my good friend Melanie. I have to tell you the funny story about this particular picture that's at the top. So my friend Karen Miller, who's the woman, very thin woman in the red shirt near the end, had just had a baby, literally 2 weeks before this. Don't we hate her? I freaking love Karen, and it's a good thing she has a great personality, because come on. We're squeezing in, and Erica's saying, squeeze tighter, and Karen says, if you squeeze any tighter, I'm going to shoot breast milk. And in case that isn't funny enough, then my friend Mary, who's the other one in the red, says, yeah, well, if you squeeze me tight enough, I'll pee my pants. I said, well, this photo shoot just got tricky. But we had so much fun, right? Because these are my people. I don't have to explain anything to them. We're talking about shooting breast milk and peeing our pants. Come on. Best photo shoot ever. Not all my crew could be there that day. My sister is the one who's holding the tater tot because I call her the tot. She's my baby sister. She flew in for this because she flies in for everything. By the way, I'm flying out tomorrow to be with her on what is not a vacation. I'll tell you that story later. My friend Nikki and my friend Erica, who couldn't be there the day of the photo shoot, but literally this pack is why I'm still in Billings. It's why I'm standing here. It's why I have a story. So find your people. So this is who I am now, right? Don't we all live in two worlds? I'm certainly more realistic than I was before that, right? It turns out you never have it dipped, right? It isn't that you shouldn't celebrate when you feel good and you have accomplished things, but also, for me, resiliency is a scar, right? No one has to be resilient until they have to be. No one wants to be resilient. No little kid says, when I grow up, I want to have life kick me in the junk so I can be resilient. No one says that. So you don't have to be resilient until you have to be resilient. And for me, that's two worlds. It's a foot in joy, it's a foot in sadness. It's a scar that I carry both physically and emotionally. It is both great and horrible, right? Everything for me is in the gray. And I think that's part of grace, right? When you stop trying to be perfect, when you stop trying to tell the world, or the world telling you it's right or it's wrong, it's black or it's white, it's my way or it's the highway, right? When you start living in the gray, both with yourself and with other people, you get so much further. My life is so much richer now in the gray than it was. But there's a price to be paid for that. And I've lost some things I don't think I'll get back. So what is it to me? What does really resilience mean to me? What's my story? It means asking for help. How many people do that well? Yeah, no one does that well. Why, right? Because it makes us vulnerable. Because then we have to tell people we're not perfect. Because then we have to show up in a wheelchair. We have to show up angry and we have to show up imperfect. And it's horrifying, right? Because what's the greatest fear we have? What's our greatest fear? We will not be loved. There's actually a Harvard study about this. What are the top 3 fears? We will not be loved, public speaking, and then death. By the way, people fear this more than they fear dying. Just telling you, we are. Be nice to those of us that stand up here because this is rough, right? Ask for help. I didn't have it in me at the time to ask for help. So my friends did it for me. But boy, I do it now. I can't do this. This is too much. I'm strapped. Can you take this for me? Will you hold this for me while I get through this? It's okay. Turns out they'll love you anyway. And if they don't, F them. You can't see everything. If I didn't know that before, I know it now. In literally 6 seconds, my life changed. Twice in a year. I still don't know where I'm going, right? But I know the next step. And then when I get to that, I'll know the next step. It turns out you don't have to see it all. In fact, it might be better you don't see it all. If I'd have seen that coming, nope. It's okay. Just stand where you're at. What's the next best choice? For you, by the way. Your best is always good enough, but you define your best. Period. The end. No one else gets to do that. This is my 2 values on a single slide. Right? Here's what life looks like sometimes, right? It's a dumpster fire, and in the dumpster fire, it's full of little dumpster fires, and around them is a bunch of dumpster fires, and it's a community of burning dumpsters. But today was okay, I had pie. It's okay to have both a dumpster fire and pie. My friend Melanie and I joke about this. There are so few things about adulting that are fun, right? Adulting is rough. 0 stars, would not recommend. But take advantage of the things that are. Like I say to her all the time, why do we guilt ourselves about the food we eat? Now, Carol, close your ears because I'm going to talk unhealthy food here for a minute. I'm an adult. I can eat what I want. Literally, no one is monitoring this. I can go where I want. Literally, no one is monitoring this. Why do we let the world monitor this stuff for us? There's so few things in adulting you get to do. Do the things. Whatever it is that makes your heart sing. And then she's not strong, right? How many of us, it's a compliment, right? You're strong, you're resilient. You bet. I am. And I'm going to own that. I'm also going to tell you I hope nobody has to do that. I wouldn't have my experiences on somebody else no matter how much I don't like them. It's horrifying. So, yes, I'm strong, and I prefer not to be. So it's okay that I don't want really to be strong, that I just want to do everything I can to move to the next step, right? And then I'm going to end with this. I have a word every year. So I don't do a New Year's resolution, I do a word. And my word this year was joy. And I think you really have to look for that after you've had to be resilient and strong, right? And so I'm a season ticket holder at MSU, go Cats. Thank you, thank you. And I know, I'm sorry, Kathy and Jane, I'm sorry. And every time I drive to all the games, right? There's a little farm that's just outside of Big Timber. And in the field, there are 3 horses and a goat. I don't know if the goat thinks he's a horse or the horses think they're goats, but every time I drive by, it gives me so much joy. And I don't have to explain that. It just does. Like, I love it in an unseemly way. So whenever I look at something, I think, oh, I don't know if I have the right to be joyful. 3 horses and a goat, baby. I'm in. I don't have to explain it.
At the age of just 19, Kelly's life took a dramatic turn when he was struck by a forklift while unloading granite and quartz slabs on July 17, 2018. What ensued was a challenging and arduous recovery process marked by pain, determination, and bravery. 2 years post-accident, Kelly made the pivotal choice to amputate his right leg below the knee to regain his independence and progress in life. Although the journey has been far from simple, he now feels a sense of hope, believing there is light at the end of the tunnel. So I would like to welcome Kelly to tell his story.
Kelly, thank you so much for being here today. I read your story a little bit, but I really want you to tell it because it is a story of somewhat tragedy, but also inspiration. So can you tell us what happened at that accident that day?
Can everyone hear me okay? Okay. First off, thanks for having me. I've only, publicly spoken about this one other time. I gave a conference in May in front of the state, in front of maybe a little bit more people than this. I think there was like 150 people. It was an hour long though, and I only have 15 minutes here. There's a lot of stuff. I took over the entire hour that I had last time, so if I miss anything out, feel free to come ask me questions, ask anything. I'm an open book. So, but yeah, so I worked with granite quartz countertops. Like Danielle said, I was unloading a truck, which I had done, I don't know, hundreds, if not 1,000 times. It was nothing new. The only different thing, I guess, that day was rather than the truck parking closest to the building, it parked across the street, and this was on Main and Airport, across the street from Airport, I guess, so Main and like Swords. So it's a small street, not a very big street, but the truck was parked, on the opposite side. And so we had to go across traffic to unload the slabs and stuff. And so I was doing my thing, nothing new, like I said, and I was walking across the street, and I just remember feeling this weird pain on the back of my leg, and then all of a sudden I fell to my stomach, and I was ran over from the back of my leg all the way up to about my butt or so. And then so the wheels on that forklift, the back ones are the ones, or the front ones, are the ones that move, and the back ones stay the same. And so in order to get off without hurting me even more, in theory, I was basically ran over straight on and then backed over. So I was kind of ran over twice in a way. But it was better than running me all the way over or turning to the side and potentially causing more damage. And then I waited for the ambulance for 15 minutes or so. Initially, I was just in so much shock that I tried to stand up and I tried to because this was in July, and so the asphalt was really hot. And so my hands were on the asphalt, and I was just trying to get off the hot asphalt. And so I was trying to stand up and move, and they're like, hey, you just got ran over, you should not move so much. And so I sat there, and then ambulance came. Went to the hospital eventually, got a room after like 4-ish hours of sitting in the ER. Finally got a room. They had figured out at that point in time that I had 8 or 9 broken bones from the knee down. So the tentative plan was I was put in a full leg splint that was basically carbon fiber and ace bandage and gauze that went all the way up from the bottom of my foot all the way up to my hip. And I had that. Spent the next day in the hospital. They tried to release me, and then as soon as I sat up on the edge of the bed, I passed out due to pain. And they said, okay, you're probably going to stay here for longer than just the one day, which I kind of anticipated. And so I spent the next couple days in the hospital, went home, in doing as best as I could. I was in a lot of pain, obviously. I'm super stubborn, and I went back to my apartment. I had just moved in with my girlfriend, and so I wanted to be independent. I wanted to go home, to my home. I didn't want to have to go to mom and dad's, even though I was going to need help from someone more than just my girlfriend. But the stubborn in me, I went back to my apartment, which is second floor, And so I had to worry about getting up the steps in a full leg splint. And at the time, I didn't think that that would be hard. And then once I got there, I was like, oh, this is harder than I anticipated. So then I finally got up the stairs, sat at home for 2 or 3 days, I think. Knock on wood, my mom is a nurse, and so she would come over and check up on me regularly. And it was, I think I was released on a Friday, and then that Sunday night, I had a fever, and I was hot and cold and hot and cold and hot and cold. And my mom was like, okay, well, let me come take your temperature. And so she came over, I had a fever of 105.4, I think, something like that. And she's like, okay, this either better be broken or we have to go to the ER. Like, there's no other choice. And so she took it again with a different thermometer. It had risen in like 20 minutes, and it was like 105.7 or something like that. And she's like, yeah, we gotta go to the ER now. And so I was so weak that I couldn't get down the stairs by myself, so we had to call the non-emergency fire department. And they lifted me down the stairs, and that was the whole ordeal. And then went to the hospital. There was the on-call surgeon, the trauma surgeon, and I did CT scans, MRIs. They're like, okay, you're septic, or you have sepsis in your leg. We can do one of two things. The surgeon can go in, remove, whatever he can, do as best as he can, or you can wait till the morning and for the actual trauma surgeon to come in. If you wait till the morning, though, the infection might spread and you might not make it. And so I was like, well, obviously choice number one. I would like to live. So I had an emergency surgery that night, which was just a snowball to so many different things. I ended up having, I think, 10 total surgeries after that. I had surgery every other day for like a week. And then I had a couple-day break, and I had another surgery. But over the course of each surgery, I'd wake up from surgery, and then the doctor would come in and he'd say, hey, so this happened, and we had to remove this, and now this is also, we found that this is torn, and this is this. And so, long story short, I had 8 broken bones from the knee down, ruptured my Achilles, dislocated my ankle so bad that I had an external fixator, which for those of you that don't know is like a big metal cage, and it was screwed into my bone in 6 different places, I think. So I had that for 6.5, 7 weeks, and that was so all the ligaments and tendons in my ankle could form, I guess, back together, because they basically said it looked like a bomb had went off inside of my leg. Everything was just torn to pieces, everything was infected. So each surgery was just bad news after bad news. I eventually got to the point where I had 90% of my calf muscle removed, just because it was so infected. And yeah, and then...
So I'm sitting here listening to this story, and you tell it beautifully. However, I'm guessing your mental state is just deteriorating as this just keeps going. Can you tell us about what that was like for you, and who was supporting you making those decisions? Because I know eventually you decided to amputate your leg, and kind of tell us how you got to that decision. But
so initially, the first time I thought about amputation was when I woke up with the external fixator, because I had no idea. I just woke up with it on, and I started touching it, and then I was like, oh, this really hurts. And they're like, yeah, you might not want to touch that. It's drilled into your bone, and you're going to have it for the next 6 to 8 weeks. And I was like, well, that means I'm going to be in the hospital for 6 to 8 weeks? And they're like, yes. And so I spent, from July, the middle of July to the beginning of September, I spent in the hospital, part of which was at advanced care. So it was like a rehabilitation long-term center. But yeah, and it was kind of like the first speaker, Becky, I think, she talked about it's a lot of dealing with stuff in your own head, in your own thoughts. And I had support. I had friends that would come and visit, and my girlfriend that stayed with me most nights that she could. My mom would stay with me most nights. But I did find a lot of time by myself, and a lot of time just thinking in my own head, and most of it wasn't good thoughts. Wasn't so much like a pity party, like why did this happen to me? Because I mean, life happens, and unfortunately it happened to me. But it was more or less, okay, what do we do from here? And I have this much long to wait, and I can only do so much. And so I kind of felt helpless, I guess, other than waiting. And so I had to learn to have patience, but not so much patience and sitting and doing nothing patient, but active patience. It was a lot of PT, even while I was in the hospital with an external fixator. I was in a wheelchair for 4-ish months after that. So it was just a lot of active patience, I guess, and learning a bunch of different things that I hadn't really even thought about learning, I guess, in the past.
I love that word that you just used, active patience, because I think most of us think of it as kind of a passive thing that we just need to have patience, but active patience must feel very different.
Yeah, I mean, it feels tedious and it feels like nothing is getting done, but kind of like Becky said, if you look at the entire staircase, you kind of get overwhelmed and you realize that, holy crap, there's 100 stairs. But it's like you don't have to climb 100 of those stairs today. You can do one step every day, even if it takes you 2 steps to go up and then you go back next step. It'll still take you 100 days, you know? And so to give myself grace and to realize that, okay, the progress that I want, I know that I'm gonna have, but it might not be in the time frame that I want it. They might say 6 to 8 weeks to heal, when in reality it might have took 10 weeks, but I was still healed. And so I kind of had to, I was forced to mature and realize that things, we don't have as much control as we think we do sometimes. So just to be actively patient. And then back to amputation. So initially I was really interested in amputation as soon as I woke up with the external fixator, because I was like, okay, it's just bad news after bad news. Just take it off and we'll start clean. And I ran around in circles with the surgeon for a year and a half, probably. Maybe a little less, at least a year. And every time it was, okay, it's only been 6 months. Let's wait on amputation, you know, let's see how you're feeling in another 6 months, and then we'll go from there. And then a year went by, and I was like, okay, I'm still in so much pain. My lack of mobility is so poor. I don't want to live like this. What can we do? Okay, we'll give it another 6 months because you know you haven't healed yet. So I gave it another 6 months, and so we just kept going in circles. And eventually got to the point where, on my own, I would see an amputee out at Big Lots or Home Depot or somewhere. And as polite as possible, I would go up and I'd say, hey, you know, can I ask you about your life? I was in an accident. I'm thinking about becoming an amputee myself, and I just want to have as much preparation, physically, mentally, emotionally, everything, so that if I do decide to amputate, then, you know, it's not going to be this new experience, I guess, even though it's going to be new. And so during that time, I met with probably a dozen amputees, became really good friends with at least 3 or 4 of them, to where it was, I would ask, you know, how do you go to the bathroom in the middle of the night? Do you put your leg on? Do you use crutches? What happens if your leg breaks? So when you're on vacation, do you go to someone there? Do you fix it yourself? Like, I tried any and everything I could think of to just get ready, and it was a lot of not only mental preparation, but physical preparation. I went from, at my heaviest after my accident, I was 222 pounds, and that was just an accumulation of eating poorly and not being able to do anything really physically. And at my amputation, I was a healthy like 130. So I mean, over the course of 8-9 months, I lost almost 80 pounds. And that was beneficial for my success as an amputee, because my leg shrinks and grows throughout the day, and so they're like, if your weight fluctuates, then you have a hard time getting your socket to fit, and then it just is a snowball for a bunch of problems. And so I was like, okay. So I tried to get my health in line all beforehand, and it was, like I said, 6 to 8 months of preparation. Just so when the time came, it was as seamless as it could be, I guess.
So what was the transformation? So I've never heard a story where somebody actually had to prepare for that kind of trauma that you're about to experience with the amputation. But in some ways, it sounds almost like it was a saving grace in some ways. So tell us about after the amputation. Like, what was your mindset? Where did it go?
Well, I think first off, one of the the amputees that I worked with, her name is Carson, and she's above the knee. And being an amputee, having a knee versus not having a knee it's a night and day. And so seeing what she does and everything that she can do without having a knee, it really gave me no excuse as to what I could do with an amputation with a knee. And so immediately talking with her, it was like, okay, well, if I want to go climb a mountain, then I can go climb a mountain with a prosthetic. It's going to take some adaptation, and it might take me, an hour longer than if I have two legs, but it's not impossible to do. And so immediately from the get-go, it was like, okay, amputation and losing part of me does not mean that I'm not here. It just means that I have to learn to do things differently. And that was really nice, because it was like I had grown up playing all sorts of sports and being super physical, and then it was just immediately like could barely walk upstairs, or with my actual leg, there was no chance I could ever run again, no chance I could ever jog, no chance anything. But I'd see people with amputations, and it was like, oh, well, he just outran his 12-year-old kid, and he's got a prosthetic leg. So, like I said, it kind of gave me the vision of, okay, nothing is necessarily impossible, it's just gonna be different than it is now. And so, yeah, once I was super serious about amputation, I sat down with some doctors and I said, okay, this is what I'm thinking. And I was fortunate enough to go to a hospital down in Denver that their whole thing is basically amputations. That's the surgeon that I had done like 5,000 plus amputations over the course of like 20 or 25 years. And so I was seeing the best of the best. The prosthetist, which is the person that makes the prosthetic, he had worked with that surgeon, and they had been kind of this big knit-group community for 15, 20 years. And so it was nice to have everything right in one central hub. And so as soon as I had my amputation and was able to heal and get my prosthetic, the sky was kind of the limit. I had my amputation August of 2020. I got my first prosthetic October, and within, I think by that Thanksgiving, so like 8 weeks, I was walking, no crutches, I wasn't running quite yet, but I had done PT, I was done with PT, I was done with OT. Actually, I didn't have to do any OT because I had so much preparation beforehand that when my actual amputation came, I was doing stairs on crutches like 3 days after my surgery, because I was just so prepared and I was so adamant about, okay, this is the life that I want to live, and so I'm going to prepare as best as possible. And yeah, since then I've done anything and everything that I wanted to. Hiked, snowboard, volleyball, basketball, golf, jet ski, anything and everything. It just takes a little adaptation.
So what made you decide to come today and tell your story? What do you hope that this audience takes away from your story?
More than anything, I have learned that we can do hard things. We can do harder things than we give ourselves credit for. Sometimes you gotta be punched in the face and knocked down, but I think that we're all capable of way more than we give ourselves credit for. And so just to remember that just because it's hard doesn't make it impossible. It's just, you gotta put a little bit more extra effort into it to get the results. And then another thing I would say is support system is huge. This is definitely not a me win, this is a team win. That being my wife, who has been with me. We were together 3 years before the accident, and now we just celebrated 11 years in September. So we've been together for over a decade. I'm only 27, so there's not very many 27-year-olds that can say that. But yeah, just support system is huge. I don't know where I would be without everyone. So
Thank you so much, Kelly, for being with us today and sharing that story. And